What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you. Last night, that was the type of night that makes you want to stop betting entirely. I don't even know what to tell you. I had 6 plays. I felt really good about all 3 college basketball plays. 2 of them won. UC Davis and Penn State, very easy winner there. The other one should have gotten there. Samford, excuse me. I can't believe my voice, man. I can't believe this upper respiratory thing continues to go on. Maybe I need more sleep. I don't know. Samford should have gotten there, man. I mean, they were winning the game the whole time. It was just a matter of they couldn't quite get they could not push the lead. They could not extend the lead as much as I needed them to, and they wound up missing the cover by a half point. And Samford, I crushed the closing line on that one. I got 7.5 on that one, and the line went off at 10.5. So you know you're getting the best of it when that happens. And they're winning the game, I think, by maybe 8, somewhere around there at halftime. I'm like, oh, this is going to be pretty good. Just extend the lead a bit more in the second half, and that did not happen. Somehow South Carolina State just hung around, so that pissed me off. It looked like Samford was going to be able to get there until it got down to the final minutes, and then it's like, oh, God, this is going to be one of those games that lands 7, because that's when you stop intentionally fouling. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. NBA absolutely should have been a win as well on the Sacramento Kings. They were winning that game outright for, I think, probably a majority of the game. And then when they weren't winning, they were losing by only a couple points. And then it just came down to what happened in the final couple of minutes. They were still within the number, I think, in the final couple of minutes of the game. And they wound up falling on the wrong side of it by 1 point. I think I wound up with a +4 on Sacramento, and they lost by 5. So those 2 plays that I just talked about were a combined loss of, 2 combined points between the 2? One lost by a half point, one lost by 1.5 points. It's unbelievable, man. And then the hockey plays, Calgary, that should have been a winner too. Calgary completely dominated that game. I know they were losing 2-0 early, but they tied the game. They had way more shots in the game, and I don't think it was just because they were losing the game 2-0. I think they completely outplayed St. Louis in many ways, especially just offensively. And it wound up being a game where they had to retie it again at 3 and then losing in overtime. Hate it. And then the Islanders, that was the one loss that I'm willing to actually accept, even though even they actually outplayed. Who are they playing? Seattle, I think. Seattle's not that good. The Islanders they outplayed them in the game, man. They had more shots, although granted that was because they were losing. So maybe you could say that because they were down 4-0. That's why the shots came in, but they had a way higher face-off percentage. They had way more hits. What can you do, man? That night last night, it wound up being 2-4, and it should have been way, way better than that. Could have easily been 5-1. Tonight, I'm being selective again. I'm going to have one playing college football and one playing college basketball. Let's get right into it, man. I'm not even going to mess around with this. College basketball, I don't even care about these other games. I'm going to talk about the only game that involves a ranked team, and I'm on this game. I am on Northwestern. I don't know what I want to take this number at yet because it looks like it keeps climbing, but I'm going to play Northwestern, take the points with Northwestern. Right now it's +3.5. It's going up higher than that, though, so I don't like that the market looks like money is coming in on the Illinois side, but I like the Northwestern side in this one. Illinois is going to be up through the 3.5 from 2.5. It looks like it's going to be 4. Maybe you can get better than 4. So this one, I think you can just kind of wait a little bit and see what you can get on this one. Illinois is the ranked team, number 19. So wherever this line winds up landing, it looks basically too easy to take Illinois. Everybody likes Illinois. Illinois, similar to last year, they could score a ton. Their defense has actually improved so far from last year, but they have not faced a difficult schedule so far. Northwestern has actually faced the more difficult schedule. Illinois really has only been tested twice. They lost to Alabama in a neutral site game, or actually it was semi-road, I think. I think that game was actually in the state of Alabama. And then they beat Arkansas, the new John Calipari Arkansas, which I think there are going to be some growing pains with Arkansas. I know they're pretty decent. They're ranked. So that's a pretty big win for Illinois. But when you have a new coach there, you tend to have some growing pains when you got players there that aren't used to his system yet. They got to get used to it. So now Illinois is coming off a big win. They've had extra time off, which in this case I don't think helps that they've had 5-6 days off, whatever, because when you're rolling like that, you have multiple wins in a row, you want to keep playing. You don't want to have an extended period of time off that will hurting your momentum, and that might happen here. They have to go to Northwestern, which is going to be a first true road game for Illinois of the season. And who do they have up next? Wisconsin, who's been playing really well so far, ranked 11th in the country, and then number 3 Tennessee right after that. So I think this is a sandwich spot. I think they may overlook Northwestern, even though, yes, this is their first Big Ten game, so that is a big deal. But I think any way you slice it, this is a bigger deal for Northwestern than it is for Illinois. Northwestern is basically always the little brother in this matchup. They're both Illinois schools, obviously. Northwestern always tends to play the role of little brother, so they get up for this game a little bit more than Illinois does. Northwestern also plays defense. These teams are similar on defensive rankings as far as Ken Baum is concerned or whatever. So if you like this game to maybe be more of a defensive battle because they're two good defenses, that tends to have you wanting to look towards taking the points. And also, this is going to be a big contrast in styles here where Illinois likes to try to play really fast, but Northwestern is going to want to slow the game way down. And as I always say, when you get a team that's not really that much significantly worse than their opponent and they're playing at home, usually they are able to win out a little bit more in that contrast of style. So Northwestern likes to really slow it down, get into the half-court type of game, and that may frustrate an Illinois team that really wants to run and play fast. So Northwestern has all of those things going for them as well. And Northwestern, they played, this is actually not their first Big Ten game. It's their first home Big Ten game because they did play on the road already and they lost to Iowa. So my one concern really is that Northwestern's a little bit less rested here, although like I said, I think the extra rest is actually going to hurt Illinois rather than help them. Northwestern, they are coming off a tough game where they went on the road to at Iowa and they played well. But I think that actually means a couple of things. You can see that Northwestern has actually been playing well against multiple pretty decent teams. They played well at Dayton, only lost by 5. That's pretty good. Losing by 2 against Butler in one of these tournaments, that's pretty good too. That's not a bad loss. UNLV, and that's a pretty decent win there. So this Northwestern team has been competitive against all the better teams that they played so far. Even though Illinois is the best team that they're going to be facing so far, but still, when you've faced some of these also fairly decent teams, it's not going to be that much more of a step up in class here, and you're at least getting to do it at home. So I like all of that for Northwestern. I think the fact that they played more recently, I think, isn't going to totally hurt them, even though, maybe they'll be a little bit less rested, but they still do have 2 days off here. They're not going to overlook Illinois. I mean, this is a huge game, so they are going to show up for this game. And Iowa also plays fast like Illinois does, so that means that Northwestern will at least be used to playing a team that plays a fast tempo. So I like all of that. So give me the points for Northwestern. If it's going to be 4, 4.5, I don't know where this is going to land. I don't like that the line keeps climbing on this, though, as far as I don't like the market indicating on the side that I'm not on, even though obviously I like getting a better number. But we'll see what happens there. That's one play. I will go over to NBA, I guess, just because I have the tab open next. Not a huge NBA slate here. I would lean to Orlando, even though I have not played any of these games. Orlando, they came off that game against the Knicks where I had the Knicks in that one. I thought Orlando was just kind of thriving in that recent stretch there by beating bad teams, so they had to step up in class, and they lost to the Knicks. I thought that was going to put them in kind of a hangover spot, and it was a bad spot because they had to go to Philadelphia on a back-to-back. Third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities. Very difficult spot there, and they were able to still win the game, although they didn't cover. I think they were a 6.5-point favorite in that one, and now they're a 3-point favorite in this one. I don't know if that result has anything to do with it, but it almost looks kind of like a zigzag to me where Orlando might actually show up and play a little bit harder in this one because that was such a bad spot in Philadelphia. Almost caught them. You may actually see Orlando step up their game a little bit more in this one. So I would actually look to lay the shorter price with Orlando in this one in the zigzag because it looks like that's the way the line has moved. And I think the line is probably overreacted to what we just saw in that game. But I don't want to play Orlando either because it is still a pretty bad spot for them. I mean, that was, what did I say? That was a 4th game in 6 days. This is going to be a 5th game now in 8 days, all in different cities. So the rest spot is still pretty bad for Orlando, so I don't quite want to do it, but I believe Orlando does have the market percentages. Yeah, it's gone up from 3 to 3.5 with juice. The line is climbing in that direction. 74% of the cash on the 77% of the tickets on the 76ers. So I do agree with the Orlando side there. It's just a matter of, has that line dropped more because of their injuries? I don't know. It doesn't look like it, really. I mean, Banchero is still out. He might be back in the next game. But Orlando does not have any other injury that is affecting that line. So I think really that line is just overreacted to that one result. So that is a big overreaction there, in my opinion. And then we got T-Wolves Warriors I'll talk about just because it is the other big game on the slate here. Warriors down from 2.5 to 1. 83% of tickets, 68% of the cash on. So the Warriors are public. But looks like there's reverse line movement against them. But I don't really want to touch this game because we still don't really know what is going on with Curry and with Draymond Green. I think they were still out in the previous game, and it looks like they're game time decisions in this game. So you really got to pay attention to the injury reports in this one. So it's not really something I want to try my hand in. I mean, Minnesota's coming off that game where I thought they were in a bad spot against the Clippers, and they still won easy at the Clippers. So they just kind of have momentum coming into this game. The Golden State Warriors, they're coming off a win over Houston. Decent win. They're staying at home. I mean, they at least ended their loss streak because they had lost a bunch of games in a row. So Golden State kind of has some positive momentum coming into that game as well. And I also do not like the Kings tonight. After I played them 2 games in a row, and they should have gone 2-0 in those. They went 1-1. Kings are up from 3.5 to 4.5, but 95% of tickets, 72% of the cash on them. So they are very public with less of the cash on. They're in a back-to-back, although I think San Antonio also is, but coming off that tough couple of games, beating Houston and then losing to Memphis, and now playing a third game in 4 days, all in different cities, and it's a 4th game in 6 days, and it's a 5th game in 8 days, mostly in different cities with just 2 games at home in the middle there. I mean, Sacramento is not in a good rest spot here, so I would lean to the San Antonio Spurs in this one, even though it doesn't look that difficult to take them because they actually have the better record and they're getting points. Spurs are also facing a 3rd game in 4 days, though, but staying at home at the very least and coming off a bad loss in their return home to Chicago. So they're in the better bounce-back spot here at the very least, and they had some rest before that Sacramento game. So San Antonio does have the better rest spot there. Moving over to NHL, quickly, there are some interesting scenarios here in this on the NHL card here, I guess. Seattle, New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey's coming off destroying the destroying the Rangers. They're coming off 2 big games, and they lost by 1 to Washington, which that game might have been overtime, too. Let me see. No, it was not. It was regulation, and then they beat the Rangers. The Rangers have really been on a slide recently, but that's still a big win for New Jersey, and then they get Seattle in here. They've had extra time off, but that extra time off, they might have just spent kind of like basking in the glow of that blowout win over the Rangers. With Colorado up next, they still might overlook Seattle here, man. So I would not want to play the Devils here, but Seattle's on a back-to-back. After that win over Carolina, they still were not in a letdown spot. I thought they were in a sandwich spot last night, and they still beat me by beating the Islanders. I'm pissed about it. I mean, what can you do there? So I don't want to play this game. Devils are up from minus 240 to 265. 89% of the tickets, 100% of the cash. Probably not accurate, but it does look like the money has come in on the Devils side early so far. And Devils, very heavy favorites. So the odds makers are telling you the Devils are a pretty good team, man. As I said, I think they were flying under the radar for a while. Maybe they aren't anymore, but they're a very formidable team. Seattle's actually probably a little bit worse than we think they are. So I'm just not going to get involved in that game at all. Whoops, I closed the NHL tab here. And then what else we got on the NHL slate here as far as big games? Rangers, I think, probably are in a bounce-back spot. They're up from minus 185 to minus 188. 89% of tickets, although only 87% of the cash on them, so I don't know about that. But the Rangers, they got to be in a bounce-back spot again, man. Even though that was a tough game, tough opponent against the Devils, they lost embarrassingly 5-1, even with Shesterkin in net. And with extra time off, I think they're going to use that extra time off to help them prepare something because they really are not facing difficult opponents up here in the slate, though. So I think they will be focused and trying to win this game, and they are the better team here. So I expect them to be in the better spot here. And Pittsburgh, they're coming off a big win over Florida, man. So even though Pittsburgh should still be focused on the Rangers here, Overtime win over Florida is such a big win that I don't know, man. I don't expect them to lapse in focus here, but I would not want to play on. I keep closing the tab. I would not want to play on the Penguins in a spot like that after that. Oh, man, I can't even get back to the NHL schedule. Let's do it here. Yeah, let me see here. And then what other games that I want to talk about here? Columbus and Vancouver, I thought maybe both teams are kind of in a bad spot here. Columbus, they played last night, but they lost pretty badly to Edmonton, but they're still in a back-to-back, so that's not that great for them, really. A third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6, 5 and 8, actually, all in different cities, and they have Winnipeg up next, so they're really kind of in a bad rest spot at the very least. I don't know if they're really going to overlook Vancouver, though, because Vancouver is pretty good. But Vancouver, they're coming off a tough game as well. They lost to Minnesota in overtime, and they're returning home from a pretty extended road trip going all the way back to November 23rd. So I think they're in a pretty bad spot as well. Excuse me. So I think Vancouver is actually somewhat in the worst spot because they're in the return home, but they do have extra rest. But Columbus is in such a bad rest spot that I don't want to play on either side here. Vancouver down from minus 230 to minus 225, and I don't really see any market percentages there yet. And Dallas, Vegas, maybe the biggest hockey game of the night, game between two good Western Conference opponents. Dallas up from minus 110 to minus 120. 67% of the tickets, 84% of the cash on them. So market indicators are on Dallas. It looks like the money is coming in on the Dallas side, and the odds makers are telling you something because the recreational bettors are going to look at this and think, hey, this is a competitive matchup, and you're getting Vegas as an underdog price at home. That looks pretty tempting to take Vegas, right? But odds makers are telling you Dallas is actually the better team to enough of an extent that they're laying a price on the road. They're coming off a loss to the LA Kings. Maybe they got caught looking ahead to this game. I don't know, but the Kings are also a pretty good team. So I don't know. I don't know that I would necessarily want to play Dallas having this many road games in a row. Vegas, they're returning home from going out one game to Anaheim. I thought that was a bad spot, man. They're on a back-to-back after beating Edmonton. They had to go over to Anaheim and play that one game with Dallas and Winnipeg coming up next. So they have a lot of time off before they play Winnipeg. But I thought that was a bad spot, and they still easily beat Anaheim. So take from that what you will. And Vegas seems to essentially alternate goalies between Samsonov and Hill. Probably going to be Hill back in net, and I think he's been playing fairly well recently. So I don't know what we can really take away from that, but the market read does look like it is on Dallas there. All right, college football, before I get out of here, which game is first on the slate? Looks like it is Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State is the first game up. This is an interesting one, man. This is hard to read. This is the Conference USA Championship game. This game is going to be in Jacksonville, Alabama, so it is at Jacksonville State's home stadium. So a lot of these football games, a lot of these lower conference football games get played at the home team's stadium, and that is the case with all three of these games tonight. The home team is actually hosting the game, or the team that's considered to be the number one seed in the conference, I guess I should say, is actually hosting at their home site, where tomorrow that's not going to be the case with the bigger conferences. Most of the big conference games are all at neutral sites. Jacksonville State here is up from 3 to 4.5, 63% of the tickets, 66% of the cash on them, and the total down from 58.5 to 57.5 with juice on the over, but 58% of the tickets and 90% of the cash on the over. I will say that I think the over may make sense in this game because the total is really kind of indicating something. And if you look at these two teams just played each other, and it was a 19-17 win for Western Kentucky. So I played Western Kentucky in that one because Jacksonville State, they really did not have anything to play for. I mean, they were already in this. They were already not only in this game, but I think they already clinched the 1 seed as well. So they really had no reason to show up in that game. And Western Kentucky still barely won the game. So that was against a pretty unmotivated Jacksonville State team there. So I do also like the Jacksonville State side for that reason, because Jacksonville State, they lost the game. They had nothing to play for, and Western Kentucky had to win the game to get into this game, because if they lost, they would not be here. So Western Kentucky actually had to go all out in that game, and really that's what they wound up doing. They only put up 19 points. I mean, that may not be the greatest signal there, so I don't know. So I do lean to the Jacksonville State side here with the market because of that, because I think that game, that result is kind of misleading because Western Kentucky was the only of the two motivated teams there. So Western Kentucky basically threw probably like their full like offensive schemes, offensive plays at Jacksonville State in that game, whereas Jacksonville State probably kind of maybe didn't like give their full effort in that one, I would guess. And the other thing about that game is Huff got hurt in the game. That's Jacksonville State's quarterback, Tyler Huff. He wasn't playing well in the game either, but he got hurt, and he did actually do well on the ground at the very least. He is a dual threat quarterback, and so is Logan Smothers, who was the guy who replaced him in the game. So you're going to have to pay attention to the injury report here and make sure that Huff is actually playing. It looks like probably because the line is 4.5, I would guess he is actually still playing in this game. And that's why the line moved from lower than it was all the way up to 4.5. I think the lower number was expecting Huff maybe to be injured, and I believe he probably is going to play in this game. Western Kentucky was down from a 2-point favorite to a half-point underdog in this game when the line went off. So if Jacksonville State on the road if this was basically a pick'em game, that would also indicate that Jacksonville State should probably be close to like a 5-6 point favorite in this game, so a little bit higher than the 4.5. So there may be a little bit of line value actually on the Jacksonville State side coming into this game as well because of that, just looking at what the number was here. But if you take the Western Kentucky 2.5 number to be more accurate, then this number does look like it becomes more accurate. Then it should be more close to like 3.5 and 4. So it depends which one of those numbers you think was more accurate. But in my opinion, I think the final, like the closing number is more accurate because it factors in all the information there. So I would tend to lean with Jacksonville State actually being more appropriately valued in this game if Huff is playing at the very least. But as I was going to say with the total, I actually think you're getting value on the total here because that game was so low scoring. It was a 36-point game. And that was the Jacksonville State offense that wasn't really putting in their full effort. Their quarterback got hurt in the game. So you weren't really seeing a full Jacksonville State offensive performance in that game. So I think that there is the potential for this game to be significantly higher scoring than that other game was. And the odds makers are telling you that. Like, you look at that other game, and it was only 36 points. It's like, how could this game possibly get into the high 50s? Well, the odds makers, again, are telling you something. Jacksonville State went a bit vanilla on offense there. I think you're going to see Jacksonville State, obviously, both teams want to win this game because this is the conference championship game. So this is the bowl game for these teams. These teams are not going to get into the playoff or anything like that. These teams are both bowl eligible. Obviously, they're going to get into bowls, but by winning this game, does that mean the bowl that you get into is going to be significantly better than the other bowl that you would get into? Not really. So the reason for playing this game is you want that title. That's what means something in these lower conferences. You want to be the conference champion. The bowl doesn't quite matter as much. It might matter for a team that doesn't get into bowls very often, like Jacksonville State, who got into their first bowl ever last year. Western Kentucky, it's kind of ho-hum as far as a bowl is concerned because they seem to always be in a bowl of around the same caliber. So does that mean Western Kentucky is going to be a little bit more motivated here? I don't know, because if anything, that game, Jacksonville State losing that game, Jacksonville State's going to have all the adjustments to make, and I think they didn't even use their full game plan in that game, most likely. So Jacksonville State is probably going to be the team that you see more changes and adaptation out of after that game that Western Kentucky has, because Western Kentucky had to win that game, so they had to throw their full effort at Jacksonville State, and somehow Western Kentucky's offense still didn't do well in that game. But I think Western Kentucky should be better on offense in this game, but they are a one-dimensional offense. It's all throwing the ball with Veltkamp there, but he is a good quarterback, and I would expect him to be able to do better against Jacksonville State's defense than he did in that prior game, because I think last year he was also able to do pretty well against Jacksonville State when they matched up, even though I think it didn't translate to points again, really. So I think these teams, actually last year, they played a low-scoring game as well with Jacksonville State, I think maybe winning the game 20-17 at home or something like that. So kind of weird that both of those games were so low-scoring, because I just don't see it here, because Jacksonville State, they're really not very good defensively. So I expect Veltkamp and Western Kentucky's offense should be able to do something in this game against Jacksonville State, even though a one-dimensional offense is not great. Jacksonville State's offense is somewhat one-dimensional as well. They basically run the ball, but they usually, like I said, they have Huff in there, a quarterback. if he's playing, or even if Smothers is playing. I guess they're both dual threat quarterbacks. So Jacksonville State at least has that extra dynamic where their quarterback can run around a little bit, and that can help open the pass a little bit when you have a good, like, double-edged rushing attack there. So Jacksonville State does have the better offensive attack, and the offensive attack that has more dimensions to it than Western Kentucky's does. Again, like an offense that all they do is throw the ball is a little bit easier to defend against than a rushing attack that has multiple heads like Jacksonville State's does. And Western Kentucky's defense is also not very good. So, again, I like Jacksonville State in this game, and I like the over in this game, but I have not played it. What's up, Dragon? What's gross? I don't know. Jacob, what's up, my man? Shadow ban? I'm shadow banned on YouTube because of my Tower Gang association? I don't know, man. And both of you guys are no longer in the viewership here. Let's go to the next game up. Both these games are at the same time, but I'll talk about the big Mountain West game last year. Tulane and Army, I've got a play on this one, and it is Tulane, -4.5. The initial money came in on Tulane, driving the line up from 4 to 4.5 with juice. So there are some fives out there. It looks like some of the money's coming back in on the other side on Army, and I don't agree with it. 52% of the tickets are on Tulane, 51% of the cash on Army. But again, like I said, I'm not buying it, even though this game is at Army. So the one thing that you really have to worry about is how is Tulane going to play outdoors in a cold weather environment? That's the only issue. It is going to be cold, but other than that, the weather looks like it's going to be fine. It's going to be a clear night, so I don't think that's going to really have that much of an impact here. And the same is going to go for UNLV, by the way, at Boise. And with both UNLV and Tulane, it's a little bit easier to adapt to the cold because both teams run the ball very well. So I don't think the cold is going to really affect those teams that much. These aren't going to be snow games or anything like that. And when you're playing with a lot of padding and you're running around, I mean, unless it's like severe cold, I don't think it's going to matter as much. So I'm fine with playing Tulane in this one, and I think Tulane is just a significantly better team. Again, the odds makers are telling you something with Army being back in the rankings. Tulane not even in the rankings, but Tulane is laying 4.5 on the road against Army. Yeah, so I think the initial market read was actually correct on this one, and I don't like that there looks like some of the cash is now coming in on the other side, but it has not driven the number back down, though. So if the number continues to climb on Tulane, it does look like that means the Tulane side is probably correct. The total's gone down from 48.5 to 45.5, so I don't know what to really think about that other than maybe the weather is kind of having an effect on that total moving. 63% of tickets, 72% of the cash, both on the over. Maybe a little bit of an overreaction to have the total be now that low, but I don't think I would want to come in and try to play an over in this one either, though, because both teams run the ball, and they both kind of slow the pace of the game down. So Army especially, you can see a lot of lower-scoring games from Army, even though I think Tulane should be able to get points in this game, though. Army's defense is actually not that good, and Tulane, they can really run the ball, and they can still throw the ball a little bit as well. So this Tulane offense is good, but they're also good on both sides of the football, man. I think they're the better team on both sides of the ball here. I mean, Army debatably has the better rushing attack because that's all they do. They're a triple option. They run the ball, though they do actually throw it a little bit. Army and Navy this year both actually have a little bit of an added dimension where they throw the ball. More so Navy than Army, but Army does take some deep shots. But Tulane, their defense is very good against the run, and Army, of course, is still an extremely run-heavy offense. So Tulane is well-equipped to be able to slow down a rushing attack. I like Army. And Tulane, here's another reason why I like Tulane here, man, is that Tulane, look at their schedule. I mean, their schedule was the more difficult schedule, but Tulane, they faced Navy like a few weeks back on the road, and they shut them out 35-0. And Army, debatably, is the better team over Navy. Navy completely fell apart after that loss to Notre Dame, but I think Navy is fairly comparable to Army in that they both have really good triple option attacks. They're both really good this year, and Navy has that T-wing offense or wing T offense where they do throw the ball as well, and Army throws it less than Navy does. So Tulane was able to completely stifle Navy, and that means Tulane is used to facing the triple option attack. I mean, these teams were all in the same conference, too, so Tulane sees these teams now every year, so I believe they saw at least one of these teams last year as well. And I believe Tulane's coach, I forget where he was before this, but I think he also is familiar with the triple option. So Tulane, I like that all that as well. They're able to defend against the triple option. like I said with Notre Dame playing against Navy and Army, I think that you can take something away when you look at a Navy result, and then you try to predict what's going to happen with the Army result in a similar situation with a similar common opponent. I think you could see a similar result there, just like Notre Dame was able to blow out both teams. I'm not going to say this is going to be a blowout. I don't really think so. I don't think this game is going to be that high scoring, but I think Tulane is the better enough team that they're going to be able to win this game by enough of a margin here that I think they're going to be able to slow down Army's rushing attack. And if they take Army's rushing attack away enough, Army's not going to really be able to do much. If Army falls behind, even though they throw the ball a little bit, they're really not a well-equipped offense to come back in a game like that. Army has faced a way weaker schedule, too. As I mentioned when I talked about Army against probably both UTSA and Notre Dame. Tulane, they played Kansas State to within 7 and Oklahoma on the road to within 15. That's not bad at all. Those teams can both play defense, and they won on the road at Louisiana, who I'm going to talk about tomorrow. Louisiana, hint, hint, is one of the Sun Belt finalists here, and a pretty good team as well. So Tulane's out-of-conference schedule was way more difficult than Army's was. And now Tulane's coming off a loss to Memphis in their final home game on senior night. I think Tulane was looking ahead to this game, man. That's all I can figure. Tulane was already in this game, although I think if they won that game against Memphis, they would be the home team in this game. So I think they're going to be maybe a little bit angry because they lost that game. I think they got caught looking ahead to this game, and they were probably thinking they were going to host this game. Now they have to go on the road, so I think they're probably going to be a little bit pissed off about that. Both teams are going to want to win this game, so I think Tulane's going to bounce back. They were a 12.5-point favorite against Memphis when this line went off. I know a loss to Memphis, who's a 10-2 team, doesn't look that bad, but Memphis has faced a really weak schedule this year. Tulane, the odds makers are telling you how good Tulane really is here. They're better than their 9-3 record would suggest, with the only losses before that Memphis one being Kansas State and Oklahoma. Not a shame, no shame in those losses. That Memphis game, though, I think they're going to be in bounce-back mode after that. I think you can't really take that much away from that. And it doesn't even look like a bad loss to the public eye because Memphis has such a good record. But I think in Tulane's mind, and as professional bettors look at this, that was a pretty bad loss. So Tulane's going to want to bounce back there. I think they really did not pay attention to Memphis in that game because they were too busy looking ahead to this game. Memphis did outgain them. Tulane was -3 in turnovers in the game too, though, so they're going to want to bounce back and clean that up. That was an ugly turnover-riddled game for Tulane. And Army, I really don't think Army's defense is that good. I know they only have one loss on the season. It was to Notre Dame. I mean, obviously, Notre Dame, no shame in losing to them. Notre Dame is going to beat you up. But look how much easier Army's schedule was. Their out-of-conference was Lehigh, FAU, and that was it, I guess, because Rice is still in conference. Oh, and Tulsa? Oh, no, Tulsa's in this conference, right? No, so who did they even play? Who was their other out-of-conference game? I don't even know. I guess it was Notre Dame later in the season. So, yeah, aside from Notre Dame, they really did not face a difficult schedule at all. Facing the lower teams in this conference, not very impressive. They didn't face Navy yet because they have the Army-Navy game is always later in the year. That's next week, so they have not faced Navy yet. So they didn't face Navy. They didn't face Tulane. So they've had a really easy go of it. And I think they did face East Carolina, so that was a good win. They beat East Carolina at home. That was a decent win. Other than that, though, and they didn't face Memphis either. So they really did not have a difficult schedule. And as I mentioned, Army, they were 7 or more point favorite in every game until they faced Notre Dame. And then they lost, and they were 6.5 point favorite against UTSA last week. And I took UTSA because I thought Army was going to be distracted a little bit and looking ahead to this game, which I believe they were. So Army didn't have a great game, but they still did cover in that game against UTSA. But again, Army, the only time that they weren't at least a 6-point favorite was this game against Notre Dame, and they got killed. And they're an underdog again here. So the only time they were an underdog at all, the only time, like I said, they were less than a 6-point favorite, they didn't do well. So this Army team, very weak schedule. They're not that good. The strength of schedule, Tulane and the odds makers, they're all telling you Tulane is the better team. Tulane, well-equipped to face the triple option. They've already done it once this year with very good results. And the other thing about UTSA is UTSA was able to slow Army down because UTSA, the one thing about UTSA, and part of the reason why I played them last week, is they can slow the run down. So UTSA's run defense is good, And I think Tulane's run defense is actually a little bit better than UTSA's is. So when Army runs into teams that can actually stop the run a little bit, like Notre Dame certainly can, and UTSA can a bit, they get slowed down a bit, man. So that's not great for Army either. So I like Tulane for all those reasons, man. I'm only slightly worried about the cold because Tulane's a warm weather team and they play in a dome as well. So that's the one issue here. But again, I think the rushing attack does translate to playing in an outdoor environment and the weather won't be bad. So give me Tulane in that one, minus the points there. And then the last game up, going to be a little bit similar to that in a way with UNLV and Boise State. I don't know if there was anything else I was going to say about Tulane. Oh, the total there, yeah, I don't know which way I would lean in that one, to be honest. I mean, I guess I would lean towards that being a little bit of an overreaction and maybe looking to an over because Tulane's offense can score and Army's defense is not that good. Like I said, I don't think they're going to be able to slow down Tulane's rushing attack enough. It's just, I think it's going to be more of a question of is Army's offense going to be able to do enough in this game against Tulane's staunch run defense. That's kind of the issue as far as looking towards the total and that one towards the over. I'm not quite sure I see it. UNLV, Boise State, the big game of the night. Boise's down from 5.5 to 4.5, 55% of the tickets, 52% of the cash. So Boise is public, and it looks like some of the money is coming in on the UNLV side. I don't really think I disagree with it, but I think the line is a little bit hard to read, I will say. UNLV, the total, is down from 59.5 to 57.5, juice to the over. 78% of tickets, 77% of the cash, both on the over. The first matchup between these two did go under this number. It was 29-24, so it landed in the mid-50s, so slightly lower than this. Boise State won the game at UNLV. So Boise did win, and in that game, Boise was a 4-point road favorite, I think. So if Boise should have been a 4-point road favorite, then Boise in this game should be like a 10-point favorite at home, and obviously the line is way, way less than that. So kind of like what I said with the Lions last night and the Chiefs this week, even though I know the Lions didn't cover. That was a crazy game last night. Lions won, didn't cover. Questionable at the end there. It looked like Goff's knee was down, and maybe it should have been a turnover on downs, and then it probably would have gone into overtime. I don't know. I think it was on the final play there, which gave them the field goal attempt there. I forget, because Campbell is kind of a madman going for it on fourth down in certain cases. I don't know. But whatever the case is. So in that respect, though, just like with that game last night and with Kansas City this week, the Chiefs, because Boise was a 4-point favorite on the road, it looks like a 4.5-point line is a little bit low based on that. But based on how you analyze how this game might break down, the number actually doesn't look like it's that low. I think the line was too high on Boise in that first game. Although I think the reality probably should be somewhere in the middle. I still think maybe line-wise, I think the line should probably be closer to where it opened, maybe closer to 5.5, 6, somewhere in that range is probably more fair. But based on the way this game may play out, I think that there probably isn't, even though there may be a slight, little bit of line value in Boise State, I think it doesn't make sense to play the Boise State side. Boise State's 10th in the country, UNLV is 20th, and now here's how this is going to shape out, I think. I think both teams need to win this game to get into the playoff. But I think that means Boise is under way more pressure here because Boise, they're the team that's been rolling along all season. Their only loss is that really close loss to Oregon, which they're the number one team in the country. I don't think they're actually the top team in the country, but ranked number one. So that loss is about the best possible looking loss you can have. So Boise has just been rolling along all season. So for most of the season, they've expected to be in the playoff. So I think the pressure is on them because now they actually have to meet that expectation and win this game. And if they lose this game, because they're sitting at number 10, I think they're going to be out of the playoff if they lose this game. Whereas UNLV, they didn't expect to be in the playoff, man. Maybe they expected to be in the conference championship game, but I don't think they expected they were going to have a chance to get into the playoffs. So UNLV, just like the gamblers they are in Las Vegas, I think they're kind of free-rolling in this game. So I think the pressure is actually off of UNLV in this game. So that would have me leaning to the UNLV side. UNLV also is pretty good at slowing down the run, and they were the team that did the best at slowing down Boise State's rushing attack in that game where they played before. And Boise has kind of fizzled out a little bit. They didn't do well against Wyoming, but maybe they were just getting bored and didn't really pay attention because they did play a little bit better against Oregon State after that. But UNLV was able to slow down Boise's rushing attack a little bit with Genty, who I think should be the Heisman winner. He's insane. He's the best running back in college football. So slowing him down still means he's probably going to get like 150 plus yards on the ground. But if you keep Boise State to under 200 yards of rushing, you've done a good job. And UNLV was one of the only teams, maybe they were the only team to do that this season. I don't remember. So Boise's rushing attack struggled against UNLV. And Boise, their defense, I think, is actually a little bit vulnerable. As you can see when you look at their schedule, some of the better offenses, they haven't faced that many good offenses, but Washington State was able to put up some points against them. Utah State was able to put up 30, some decent points against them. UNLV, San Diego State didn't do that bad offensively against them. Really, Nevada and San Jose State got into the 20s against them too. So Boise State, their defense is okay, but it's still a little bit vulnerable. And UNLV has a multi-headed offense. Their offense is pretty dynamic with Haj Malik Williams there. I think he adds a dynamic that Sluka, who quit the team, doesn't give them, and that's that Malik Williams is a dual-threat quarterback, so he can throw as well, but he can run the ball, and UNLV's rushing attack is also really good, just like I said with Tulane. So the one thing is, UNLV, they're used to playing in Vegas, in the desert, so they're not used to playing in cold weather. This is going to be a cold game as well, very similar to the Army one. It's going to be right around freezing. The Army one's going to be a little bit lower temperature than this on the blue turf there in Boise, but it's going to be still clear conditions in both of these games, so cold and clear, but both UNLV and Tulane have good rushing attacks, so they can both run the ball, and when you're an underdog like that, that is what you want. With Tulane, I know they're a favorite. I just think they're the better all-around team there. With UNLV, if they're able to slow Boise State's rushing attack down a little bit, Boise State isn't that great at throwing the ball, even though they did actually have some success doing that against UNLV when their rushing attack wasn't totally working. They were able to make some big passes, and that helped them win the game. But UNLV, they can slow down the run, which should help them, and they can run the ball. So when you're playing an underdog, that's the type of profile you like, man, for an underdog, getting the points like that. So that's the way I would lean there. I think the pressure is on Boise for all those reasons there. And for Boise, before I get out of here, so I think if they lose this game, they're going to drop out of the playoff completely. But if they win, they're going to get the 4th seed, and they're going to get a first-round bye. So there's a huge spread of what could possibly happen there. Whereas if Boise loses, then I think the Big 12 winner, because you can see they're ranked like 15 and 12 or whatever, the winner of that game would then jump Boise and get the 4th seed and get the last first round, or jump UNLV, or jump Boise, but UNLV would be the team that would get in. So UNLV would actually wind up in the 12 seed, I think, if they won this game, and the Big 12 team would get the last bye, whereas if Boise wins, they're going to get the last bye. So I think that is what's going on here. That's going to be the case. That's going to do it for me. I'm Tower Gang Toad. My 2 plays tonight are Northwestern plus 3.5, or maybe you can get better than that in college basketball, and Tulane in the American Athletic Championship minus 4.5. So American Athletic, Conference USA, and and Mountain West are all tonight. Tulane minus 4.5. That's going to do it. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Go follow the Tower Gang podcast. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. Throw us some support, and you get live pre-show, post-show, get all that good stuff. Bonus content. I am out of here. Nate, thanks for hanging out, man. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Nate, Jacob, Earn That Dragon, all 3 of you. Thanks, and peace out. Let's get back on the winning side, man, because that was brutal last night. Peace.